Welcome to the Heritage Foundation formula. This is a little formula that I use to debunk questionable sources. And so this is something you usually use during crossfires. If you have no other questions and you know they have a questionable source, you can just use the Heritage Foundation formula. So it begins by asking who is the author, what are their credentials. And this obviously can only go two routes: I don't know or I know. I'm going to start with the I don't know because that's the easiest to go with, and that is simply, how can we trust the word of an author that we don't know the credentials of? Which is a very fair statement to make, simply because when making a debate case, it is incredibly important to have both questionable sources to, like, questionable websites, or if the website really doesn't seem that great, you can cite directly from the author. And in fact, it's really important to know who the author is when citing. It's also important to know their qualifications. Okay, somebody may have a PhD and they're talking about the geopolitical influence of China, but their PhD may be in, like, pediatric dentistry or something, and that doesn't really make them very qualified to talk about China and their geopolitical influence when they have no qualifications, no specializations, no award, or no authority whatsoever when, on any of those fields. So it's incredibly important to understand who your author is and what right, or well, not necessarily what right, but what credibility they have to talk about, these to talk about these issues, to talk about the stance. So so that's just the I do not know path. How can we trust the word of an author that we don't know the credentials of? Or you can do this if they have irrelevant credentials as well. But typically that goes with the I know. So if they know who the author is and they know what their credentials are, then they will simply give you, the author and their credentials. If it is legitimate, you say thank you and you quit asking questions, okay? You don't need to ask anymore if, their source has already proven itself to be reputable. If the source is biased, okay, so if they're sourcing from, the Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute, what are some other think tanks? I can't really think of any else. But even stuff like the Washington Post, okay, they are very, very biased and will sometimes use that bias in order to just refuse to report factually. And so you will call that into attention. Are you aware that the source is considered very loaded and does not report factually? Okay, their response is kind of irrelevant because in your upcoming speech you can simply say it is fair to say that this source formulated an opinion mainly around political preference and personal ideology rather than impartial facts, and as a result should not be considered a serious factor in today's debate. That's simply how you refer to this. This is a very, very simple formula, but it is very effective when actually questioning the legitimacy of sources. So make sure you do this in your debates if you need to. Only do it when necessary, because personally, asking questions about sources is kind of weak if the source is legitimate. So if there is a very questionable source, just run through this real quick. It takes about 2-3 questions, and you're good to go. That's all you need to know about the Heritage Foundation formula. This was 4 minutes. Adios.